So here's the thing. If you went and got yourself 2 puppies, congratulations. You have 2 bundles of joy, and that's wonderful. But basically, you have double the work.
Right. It's like you now have twins. It's like you just gave birth to twins.
Exactly. And with twins, we can raise them together because we have all this ability to be logical with them and emotionally separate them at some point during their life as well. With puppies, once they are bonded as young puppies, it's really hard to break through that. So first off, I would make sure that these puppies spend the overwhelming majority of their time separated. Yes. So separate crates, separate training scenarios. You know, in a perfect world, if you bring home 2 puppies, you have 2 handlers, right? You have 2 people in the house who are both basically raising one of those puppies on their own. So I would let those puppies spend very little time together because unfortunately that bond, like it's nice for them to bond, but unfortunately, that bond ends up being extreme. And then typically, the weaker of the 2 puppies in terms of temperament ends up so reliant on the stronger of the 2. And then if something happens to that stronger puppy, it's devastating.
Yes.
So I always want each of my puppies, anytime I bring home another dog, I want them to be confident, independent individuals. That's my goal for creating this wonderful dog, is that I want them to be confident,
right.
just being.
Right.
You know, I don't want them to have to need anything just to exist in a stress-free existence.
Right.
So I think it's really important that you raise them all separately.
And each puppy needs to have its own identity.
Yeah.
And it has its own personality, and we have to develop that.
Yeah,
We can't treat them as one.
Yeah.
They need to be treated as separate entities.
Yeah. And I would say if you're going to have the 2 out together before they are fully trained to listen to your voice, you need a second handler.
Yes.
Because like you said, fixing things like jumping is trickier. Yeah, because you only have the 2 hands, right? And you need to use those 2 hands to address one puppy fully. And then the other puppy's going to be jumping while you're doing that. And if you try to address the other one, like it's a no-win situation, really. So you need to be able to give 100% of your attention to that one puppy when they're out. And then that puppy can go away and take a break. The other puppy can come out and you can give 100% of your attention to that puppy. They can spend very little time together. And then as they grow up, so this gets trickier as well. So littermate syndrome is a very real thing. And normally, instinctually, there would be a point with those 2 puppies where they would separate from each other because they would be competing for the same resources. So especially if they're the same sex, right? You might have a little bit of a better chance if you have a female and a male partner versus, and of course, make sure that they're spayed and neutered so you don't have any oops breedings with a full sibling. If they're littermates, assuming they're littermates. But we want to make sure that we don't ever set that scenario up, right? If I have 2 male puppies and they're growing up together, they get to a point where the hostility will just suddenly appear, right? If you're adept enough at reading dog body language, you might be able to see some signs leading up to it, but they're typically pretty subtle. And the explosion after the fact is not subtle. So a lot of the times these littermate scenarios end up going very poorly once the dogs get to like that adolescent stage in their life. They start fighting with one another, and then people are reaching out for behaviorists and all sorts of things to try to solve these problems. But really, it's just such an unnatural thing for them to stay together that now they're conflicted because they're fighting for the same resources. So it's double the work. It's a lot of management. It's a lot. You know, I would definitely, I mean, there's nothing wrong with multi-dog households. We all have multi-dog households, right? But the difference is that we get a puppy, we raise that puppy, we get to a point where we have good verbal control. They understand the rules of the house. They understand how to listen out and about. They have a wonderful life, basically. So we might be doing some higher learning stuff with them. You know, this is by the time they're, you know, a year and a half, 2 years, I might think, okay, it's time to bring home a puppy now. You know, now that I'm not having to devote all this time to the other dog, now I have time to devote to a puppy. But getting them both together, I mean, you have to have double the time. You have to, and if you don't have double the time and you're skimping on those things, it might end up biting you in the behind as your puppies get older. So